Perfect. All right. We're back. I haven't done one of these in a while. We haven't done one of these in a while, but
Yes.
you guys, newsletter subscribers may all remember that Olivia and I used to talk relatively recently, or frequently. And recently, I wrote an article about our experience with mold. And I'm happy to say, Becca and I's experience with mold, not Olivia's, that we're detoxing. We're feeling better. We're on the path to recovery for the most part. We still have a few tests to do to make sure that the mold is out of our system. But I wanted to talk to Olivia today because she has a lot of expertise, particularly in the gut health, gut dysbiosis realm. We've talked a bunch
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah.
And I've been really curious without having spoken to our dedicated, person, our medical professional on this mold issue, how much detox I've been doing, how much, even though I feel better, which is ultimately the goal, um, how how much of it is out of my system. So, Olivia, I told you offline that we have been taking a ton of supplements.
Hmm.
I know you work with supplements pretty heavily in your practice,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
I noticed that the supplements are very focused on like digestive stuff and getting stuff through your digestive tract and ultimately out the other end, we'll say. Um,
Increasing bowel movements.
is that the most surefire way to get, I guess we'll just say toxins, not just mold, but toxins
Mhm.
out of your system? And are there other ways that maybe our doctor is missing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely increasing your bowel movements is a good way to eliminate toxins. I want to preface this whole conversation by saying, like, mold detox is not my expertise by any means, but I have worked with plenty of people who have been experiencing or have experienced mold toxicity, and I've implemented plenty of detox protocols to like know just anecdotally what has worked and maybe has not worked. And I know the test that you did is a little bit different to get the mold. Was it a blood test? Well, you
It was
didn't share
actually a
that. Was it?
nasal swab that we did.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
It's interesting, and not to digress, but there's a lot of different kinds of molds. And so
Mhm.
I wonder how many molds they were testing with the nasal. Like, were they just trying to determine if there was one, or because there's so many different kinds, and the test that I use in my practice tests for like, I think 39 different mycotoxins, which are byproducts of mold metabolism. So that's something to, again, not to digress, but something to keep in mind.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, yeah. So to answer your question, I would say yes, bowel movements and making sure that you're like passing your stool frequently. I
Mhm.
would say upwards of like 2 times per day is probably the gold standard, although it's like, hard and uncommon for a lot of people.
Sure.
But yeah, that is one of the best ways to detox toxins from your system. I know we've talked a lot about gut health and how toxins can live in the gut, and everything basically has to be processed through our gut. So it makes sense that like we need to make sure that we're getting that sort of like toxic waste out of our system on a daily basis. I would say sweating and then urination are other really good ways to detox too. But definitely increasing the frequency of our bowel movements is like non-negotiable for detox.
Maybe a bit surprising. I think sweating doesn't come as much of a surprise to people because that seems to be, with sauna culture on the rise is um very self-explanatory. You know stuff is coming out of your skin and you usually feel better after a sauna trip. But you talked about your detox experience with your clients. And it doesn't have to be mold necessarily, but when you're trying to get, I'm hoping this will give me clarity on our experience. When you're trying to get something out of someone's system, be it through any of those methods,
Hmm.
do you have a set time frame or maybe an average time frame among your patients where that the protocol has lasted before somebody has
Yeah.
felt fully detoxed?
Yeah. I would argue, and this maybe doesn't answer your question directly, and I will answer your question directly, but I would
Sure.
argue that most people need detox support on an ongoing basis.
Oh, okay.
Just
Got it.
because we are outside of mold, we are so exposed inevitably to so many different kinds of toxins.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
with it's just the nature of our modern world and our personal care products and our food supply, sadly,
Yeah.
and our water supply.
Yeah.
Um, they're everywhere. We're kind of being bombarded. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Rhonda Patrick, but she talks a lot about this.
Yeah.
She's a nutritional scientist based out of San Diego, and she has a podcast. I think it's called Found My Fitness or something.
That's right.
She's brilliant and she does tons of research on this. And so I would again argue that most people need detoxification support on an ongoing basis. But if I'm putting somebody on like a full detox protocol based on, elevated levels of toxins that we're seeing in any kind of testing that we're doing, I would say we need like 3 to 6 months. Three
Mhm.
months is probably more valid, like 3 months of super specific targeted detox support, and then like maybe looser support ongoing from there. But
Yeah.
that's generally the time frame that's needed to see to have to make sure that we're moving the needle, basically, when it comes to making sure that we're eliminating like any toxins that are super high, super well elevated.
I think that's helpful to know because we're kind of approaching the 3 to 4 month time frame of our detox protocol. So like I said, I've been feeling better, but it's helpful to know that maybe we're kind of approaching that time frame where we might start to test again and see where our levels are at, how effective the detox has been. And I probably do owe Rhonda Patrick's podcast a little bit more listening. I feel like I you have the unfortunate experience with her where I seem to see all of her clips that people think are very hyperbolic. And I don't actually think all of them are hyperbolic. I actually, as a fitness professional, think like actually I like that take. I don't think it's that fear mongering or
Yeah.
anything like that. But occasionally she'll say something like that, which is that everybody needs to detox and everybody is constantly exposed. And people get scared by that because they're like, well, what am I inhaling in the air? But that's just the US. I mean, if we want to go, I know you
Yeah.
were you were recently where in Mexico or Costa Rica or something like that.
Oh yeah, I was in Mexico in December, but I was in the Philippines in February for my brother's wedding. And
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Wow.
Manila, I think, is one of the most population dense cities in the world, and there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of air pollution for sure.
I was just about to say, I thought if you were in Central America, maybe, I would make a case for that being maybe one of the lesser polluted areas, but actually I can't really say whether or not it is. Philippines for sure, and a lot of
Yeah,
Southeast Asia has smokestacks and oil stuff left and right polluted in the water and things like that. So it's unfortunate, but there's
yeah,
very few areas across the world where pollution isn't a thing. So I think that's interesting.
yeah. So,
I would also want to know, what we've talked about a lot of dietary adjustments you've made with your patients,
mhm,
supplementing fiber, probiotics, and things like that. Where on the or maybe we're just kind of repeating them and I think it's worth repeating even if they are just the heavy hitters in terms of supplements, but where do you tend to turn when it comes to supplementing for specific detox? Is it still the
mhm,
probiotics, the fiber? Are there ones that maybe we haven't talked about previously that you might say, hey, this could work for anybody, not just a detox
mhm.
patient?
Yes, I love this question because there's so many supplements that we can use for detox. Of course, I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but
Yeah.
the ones you mentioned are very, very good and very relevant in terms of like any kind of detoxification protocol. But there's so many other really, really good ones. Fiber is huge, of course, especially soluble fiber from like psyllium husk can be really beneficial as we know that binds to toxins in the gut and helps with excreting them from our system and helps with increasing, again, the frequency of bowel movements that we've discussed. But we also want to take into consideration the fact that our liver is one of the biggest detoxification or the one of the main detoxification organs, I should say.
Mm.
So we have three different pathways in our liver through which all of these toxins that we come into contact with endogenously, but there's also things that we produce or I'm sorry, that we come into contact with exogenously,
Exciting.
like things in our environment, but then there's things that are also produced internally that we have to detox, like estrogen, for example,
Mm.
which is also detoxed through our liver. And so I think when we're thinking or talking about detoxification, we have to also talk about liver health and
Mm.
what we can do to optimize those three pathways in our liver for enhanced detox. So I would say glutathione. This is like one of
Ah,
my favorite ones.
yeah.
Glutathione is an antioxidant. It's found naturally within a ton of fruits and vegetables. So like any kind of cruciferous vegetable is going to be high in glutathione. So, like broccoli, bok choy, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, green bell peppers. Glutathione is also found in leafy greens like spinach or berries, but that can be really, really great for assisting with liver detox. We could also think about N-acetylcysteine, NAC, which is it's an amino acid, but that helps to boost glutathione levels naturally within our
Mm.
system, the
Okay.
NAC. So that can be another good one. I would say alpha lipoic acid too. This is another antioxidant that's really, really good for liver detox. Milk thistle is also really good. Milk thistle is an herb. It's very, very versatile. This is one of my favorite detoxification herbs. It's like what I've mentioned previously, the glutathione, the NAC. These are all like chemical compounds that are found within foods, but milk thistle is like an actual botanical,
Mm.
and it's really, really good for liver detox. It's been used for centuries and centuries, especially amongst indigenous peoples here in America. Like
Wow.
Native Americans have used milk thistle a lot for detox. Yeah, you should, if you have time, you should look up the research on milk thistle for liver health because it's pretty remarkable. What else? What else is good for liver detox? Sulforaphane, which
Okay.
is found naturally within like again cruciferous vegetables, so things like broccoli sprouts.
Yeah.
DIM is another one, which is just an acronym for a longer name for a compound that's also found within cruciferous vegetables.
Yeah.
This is also really good for liver detox. Um, Calcium D-glucarate is another one too. It's less strong, but that's another compound that is also found within cruciferous vegetables. So
Mm.
I would say those would be like I know I named probably six or seven just there, but those are good ones for liver detox for
Well,
sure that I would focus on.
I appreciate you adding to the list because you definitely
Yeah.
didn't. I don't think we named any ones that we've talked about previously. Glutathione, I'm aware of. I see a lot of wellness spas doing IVs of that stuff.
Oh
So,
yeah.
so I think that's definitely something that I'm a little bit more conscious of. But good to
Mhm.
know that it is in those foods. I actually didn't know it came from those foods, and if I
Yeah.
did know, I thought maybe it's in such a small trace amount that maybe I need to supplement it more.
Mhm.
A few of those I wasn't aware of. Milk thistle, I actually do have some knowledge of, only
Okay.
because my dad just had it in his supplement cabinet. He had a big supplement
Oh,
cabinet for
nice.
a while, and I would always be like, what's this fish oil? What's this milk thistle? Vitamin D, and I guess just having spoken to you, he had a pretty good stack, honestly. And
Awesome. I
that's
love
why
that.
he's like 75 and still kicking. So,
That's
um,
amazing.
but I also watch a show on Netflix called Outlander. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but
Mhm.
the main character is a nurse, and she travels back in time to like the 1700s, and she's like doing her nursing in the past, like when she travels back in time, and people think she's a witch, but she just knows a lot about herbs and medicine, and she's like, take this milk thistle. So
Yeah.
so
Oh my God.
that I was like, okay, maybe it has really been this ancient herb, if you will.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's really actually interesting, the liver, knowing that it does play such a big role. I think we need to be reminded of that pretty frequently. Is it possible, just staying on that topic, that the liver is an essential part of my detox, even though my detox is a little different? I mean, is it mold because it's mold? Is it playing a role in getting stuff out of my system or?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. The majority of mold detox protocols do sort of focus on like the gut detox
Mm,
and like
got it.
absorbing the mycotoxins in the microbiome and then the elimination
Got it.
through bowel movements. And then
Okay.
sweating too is
Yep.
huge.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to note with sweating is like if you're, and we talked about this, like the running versus the sauna. The running is great, but I would recommend like more targeted support for sweating with like a sauna. You want to make sure as you're sweating, you're wiping it up so
Yes.
that the mycotoxins aren't necessarily being reabsorbed and like sitting on your
Oh,
skin.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't let my wife hear this. She's gonna bother me to get back in the sauna again because
yeah,
I was like,
good.
I'm fine. I sweat gallons a day when I run, but I didn't consider the reabsorption effect. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
guess
yeah. No, it's really, really valid, really important. But that's not to say like focusing on liver health isn't gonna be helpful. You
yeah.
know, it's still a major player in the detoxification puzzle physiologically. So I still think like adding some liver support, again, like whether you have mold toxicity or not, focusing on enhancing your liver detoxification pathways can be beneficial.
Mm,
Just because, again, most people are exposed to a variety of different toxins, and like there's the concept of our liver becoming like overburdened, or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a big thing now too. And I truly, I'm of the firm belief that most people should be showing their liver some love and support
yeah.
regardless of what's going on.
Agreed. Yeah, I think this is important too because as we do more of these episodes, I'm conscious of the idea that the advice we're giving people should be for everybody, right? It shouldn't just be like, oh, this is only matters to you if you're detoxing your body or if you have this specific ailment. I think that's helpful advice for sure. On
Mhm.
the concept of general detoxing, maybe it's a little bit more mold specific, but I've noticed that when we've been, I'll say, working to increase our stool production,
Mhm.
that the stuff we're using to the binding supplements to get the mycotoxins out usually binds with fat. So, what role does
Mm,
fat play? Because we talk a lot about fiber. What role does fat play in getting toxins out of the system through the gut?
yeah. Your doctor told you to take your supplements with food,
Yeah,
or what are you referencing?
some sort
Okay.
of food that has like a bit of fat in it. So like, a cup of yogurt or I do it with a bowl of cereal with like some 2% milk and that usually does the trick. So yeah. But
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
curious if you know anything about that.
Yeah. I guess that I'm less familiar with, but I think it would make sense in the context of like, there's like encapsulating the toxins almost,
Mm,
like fat is like phospholipids, for example, we think of like being helpful for like encapsulating toxins.
right.
Like they say that a lot of toxins are stored in and accumulate in our fat tissue.
Mm,
And so I guess it would make sense, just like process of deduction, because again, I haven't necessarily heard that. I'm less familiar with that mechanism of action, but that would make sense, I guess, in terms of like capturing the toxins perhaps,
right.
or making them easier to capture,
Yeah.
and then allow for like better excretion.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
that's good. It's worth, I think, looking into and poking out a little bit.
Mhm.
To wrap things up, I want to kind of see if you are maybe familiar with some ideas that beyond the supplements, beyond the sauna stuff, other things
Mhm.
people could do from a maybe a non-nutritional lens to keep themselves, we'll call it constantly detoxing, right? Um,
Yeah.
given the fact that we're in a pretty, I guess, toxic environment, I guess just mostly here in the US.
Mhm.
Are there day-to-day habits? I'm thinking like maybe more along the lines of like um, you know, humidifiers or something like that that people could, invest in that are not a huge lift, not a huge change to their
Mhm.
day-to-day, but could benefit them from like the idea of keeping somebody constantly in that phase of like excreting and getting stuff out. What comes to mind for you there?
Mhm. I think something that's like the lowest lift, and I think you'll appreciate this, is
Mm.
movement.
Yeah.
Movement on a daily basis, even if that's like getting up from your desk, every hour of the workday and doing like 10 air squats or something.
Mm.
We want to get that lymph flowing to help with detox. A lot of people don't
Mm.
think about like lymphatic drainage as being
Yeah.
a big part of detoxification, but it really is. So anything we can do to like move and manipulate Lymph and encourage lymph flow can be really helpful. So movement is a big one.
Yeah.
Massage is really good too. I would say also something that I've recommended to a lot of my mold patients, and I can share this with you. If you can even maybe link this in your when I share it with you, link it in your newsletter so your
Yeah.
readers can have access to it. There's a thing in Ayurveda, which is Ayurveda is like the old Indian medicinal system. I studied it a lot when I was studying yoga in my early 20s.
Hmm.
It's a wooden roller. It literally
Hmm.
looks like a rolling pin,
Okay.
but instead of being flat, it has like little edges, like it's pokey,
Yeah.
and you use it. It's similar to dry brushing, like kind of same mechanism there, but you instead of rolling, like you start maybe at your ankles and you roll like your legs, and you know apply pressure and you kind of roll in like a as you would a rolling pin if you're making like homemade pasta or
Okay.
something. But that really helps to encourage the flow of lymph as well. And they're like $10 on Amazon, and that can be really, really good for mold detox. I actually had a colleague, she was telling me that she was experiencing a lot of burnout and adrenal fatigue and
Hmm.
like holding on to a lot of water weight because she was so high cortisol. And
Yeah.
she was doing that. She ended up losing within like 2 weeks. And of course, I'm not saying, I mean, this is very like nuanced situation, but
Sure.
she ended up losing like 10 pounds of water weight, she said,
Yeah.
within a
Wow.
couple weeks because like she was, encouraging that detox in that way. So that would be another one. People really love vibration plates. I know that's also
So we
like
have one
a
here at the apartment.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
It's
awesome.
cool. I think it does stimulate the lymph a little bit, right? I think there's just something. I've done a little bit of research, maybe not as much as you, on lymphatic drainage. And what I can say is that when you stand on this, and you can find one on Amazon for 80 to 90 bucks, maybe not a huge lift either. When you stand on that thing for 10 minutes and it shakes you from the feet, I sometimes sit on it too.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
it really makes you feel like there is and not like stomach fluid. I'm not trying to like gross anybody out. It just really makes you feel like there's fluid traveling on the outskirts of your body to different places, and it's awesome. It's great. So
Same.
a
They
big
have one at
advocate.
Equinox,
They
didn't
do.
they?
They do have one
They
there.
did it when I worked at the one in Grand Central, I'm pretty sure.
That one, yeah, was a lot more souped up. I don't think it
Mm,
needs to be that complex looking. I'm sure
yeah.
it maybe has a little bit more shake power, but big advocate of it. You can find one on Amazon. Maybe I'll link it in the newsletter too. It's great. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, one last thing I wanted to mention. I know we're talking about like optimizing detox, but of course we also want to talk about like reducing our exposure, and that's a
mm,
whole other conversation, right? And there's
yeah,
so many different ways we can, optimize our environment to reduce our exposure to toxins and chemicals. But I wanted to mention air filters too, and this is especially relevant, I think, for this conversation with you dealing with the mold toxicity. Having
yeah,
like HEPA filters in the home can be really, really helpful because a
right.
lot of them do trap mold spores. Like Air
Mm,
Doctor, for example, is really good. I have two of them in my apartment,
okay,
and can be really great for just cleaning the air and
great. Yeah.
reducing your exposure, yeah, to like the mold in particular.
I think that is important. Well, I love that you gave options that were not like sweat inducing, right? Because as a
Yeah.
trainer, I feel like I'm always saying like, here's an exercise, but like there is this kind of, I can understand this too. There is this kind of, I think, roadblock that people come to when it comes to like facing movement, whether it has to be like a stretch or anything like that. Like, oh, I don't want to make it a whole thing. I don't want to have to, get into
Mhm.
my workout clothes. I don't want to have to sweat. So like the idea that you can
Yeah.
just do some movements, like you said, 10 air squats that hopefully won't induce too much sweat, and you don't have to change out of your current outfit to do, that are pretty easy to just stimulate some lymphatic drainage. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. All very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Just, daily like lifestyle practices too. Again, even if you're not moving through a specific detox protocol, all of these things can be helpful for just optimizing your health and your life.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, Olivia, thanks for giving some perspective here. I have been
Absolutely.
back and forth with you about this particular conversation for a while, but
Mm,
like I said at the beginning, we are on the other side of it, thankfully. And
yeah.
I feel like even just talking with you here for 20, 25 minutes, I've got some good ideas with which to kind of compound my detox. And I'm also very conscious now that the detox doesn't stop once we have, the mold out of our system. It's a constant process. So I think that's
Yeah,
something
keep
everybody
that
can
in
take away
mind.
from this.
Yeah,
So so I appreciate you as always.
of
And
course.
let's try to do this again soon.
Yeah, for sure.